Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to be hosting Gary and Chris, who is calling in from St. Louis on our platform today. We'll be sharing and discussing our best facility management tips from registration to customer experience to camps, you name it. I know you guys came with burning questions, and rest assured, these guys definitely have answers. So before we kick this off, I have a few housekeeping notes. All audience members will be muted during the entirety of the call, but if you do have questions, you can enter them in the question box below, and we'll try our best to answer them at the end of our call. A recording of this webinar will be sent to you a few days after the webinar, so you can watch it back and please share it with your facility management friends. All right, well, Chris and Gary, welcome to the panel. If you don't mind giving everyone a brief introduction before we get started.
Sure, I'll start. So some of you guys may know me. I'm Gary Lindsay. I am a management consultant with Pinnacle Indoor Sports. I've been in the industry for 35 years. I specialize in marketing, operations, and management. And I speak regularly every year at the U.S. Indoor Conference. So if you're familiar with that, you've probably heard me before. So hopefully I can be beneficial to you today.
Chris Turin, I'm the president of Veta Sports. Pete and John Spanos are the owners of Veta Sports. I've been in the industry for about 30 years, and we have 10 locations in the St. Louis metro area. A lot of indoor turf fields, 13 outdoor turf fields, outdoor grass fields, inline rinks, basketball courts, volleyball courts, racquetball courts, tennis courts, double as pickleball courts, and we provide about 75% of our utilization through leagues and our own programming. So not really much into the rental side of the business. And hopefully some of our answers, like Gary said, we can provide you guys with some direction or answers or feedback that's helpful.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Keisha. I'm the marketing coordinator at Daysmart Recreation and also host of the webinar today. So before we begin, I always like to start off with a quick poll so we can get a gist of what our audience hopes to learn from our discussion today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll right now and give you guys about 2 to 3 minutes to answer that. And then Chris, Gary, and I are going to review your answers. Cool. So hopefully you guys are able to see that. The question we have for you guys is, what's a topic you hope to learn from this webinar today? That goes from challenges in the industry, how to effectively plan leagues and camps, marketing tips to increase your registration numbers, how to improve the customer experience, and all of the above, of course. I'll give you guys about 2 minutes to answer those. All right, I'm seeing that about 80% of you voted. I'm gonna give you guys about 1 more minute. All right, some interesting answers. I'm gonna go ahead and close that and share it with Chris and Gary. So Chris, I know you're calling in, so Gary and I can kind of analyze what we see for you, but it looks like we got some interesting numbers. So for the question, what's a topic you hope to learn from this webinar today? About 10% of our audience said challenges in the industry. 30% of them said marketing tips to increase registration numbers, and 50% of them said all of the above for all of the answers we mentioned. So I'm excited to dig into this. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I would have voted all the above too. So we're good.
Well, luckily for our listeners, we will be going over all of the above. So Gary, to kick things off, I'd like to kind of start with you. As you mentioned, at one point, you were the president and COO of LK Soccer in Chicago, where you ran the largest little kicker franchise in the country, serving close to 20,000 children on an annual basis. From your experience with little kickers and in your current role as CAO at Pinnacle Indoor, what would you say is the biggest challenge in the industry for facility managers right now?
Easily the biggest challenge facing industry is the hiring of staff, both full-time and part-time staff. Obviously, wage inflation is quickly outpacing our ability to raise prices to maintain profitability. So that's a major problem, not just in our industry, but across all industries. And then, in addition, the service industry, which we primarily are in, has seen a large decline in the willingness of young people to, want to work in the front lines with customers using, in-person communication tools. So I think those are the things that we struggle with a lot. A lot of the high school kids that we hire for Little Kicker coaches, during the pandemic, they lost their ability to focus on multiple tasks, i.e. go to school, hold a job, right? They lost some of those things. So it's really getting people back into the mode of interacting with customers, and not to mention all the YouTubers out there making money doing content, right? So it's a lot easier than talking to customers.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, I want to toss that same question over to you. As president of Veta Sports, which is a multi-locational and multi-sport facility, what are some challenges you faced while managing such a large facility?
Yeah, so it comes as no surprise. Our challenges are similar to what Gary lined out. There's some overlap in our answers, but I definitely, I'll run through our list, and this is our current list. It's hiring. We treat hiring as a marketing item. We don't. Yes, of course, it's an expense, but we have to treat it like we're marketing for hiring. So it's constant, but particularly 21, plus 21 staff that we need for our managers on duty roles and our concession roles. And then of course, referees for youth and adults. So those are our biggest hiring challenges. Another challenge we have is teaching people that we've hired that have worked through our system that are really good at doing to hire operational support staff that they can delegate to. A lot of times people that are really good at doing aren't necessarily great at delegating. So it has to be a constant mission of using the people around you to help develop them, to help develop you and make your outcomes better. In our business, in our industry, what I've seen for a number of years, it's not going away technically, is the seasonality of some revenue streams is a factor. You'll see drop off from season to season. It's nothing new to a lot of people who have been in this business for a while, but that's a challenge in our industry. And then, finding and utilizing technical solutions for recurring tasks and customer self-service. Trying to promote more customer self-service so our best people can do what they do best, not necessarily answering phone calls, but how do you log into something or how do you sign up for something? And then I think Gary touched on this too, but it's an all-encompassing answer. Really, in a high-touch, people-centric business, how do you create margins? How do you create better margins and continue to effectively do that while providing, the things that appeal to people, like providing fun. That's going to be done by other people. So how do you create margins while still employing people in a high-touch business?
Yeah, for sure. I think hiring is such a great point that we often overlook. It also depends on your location, how many people are available to take on, certain roles at the facility. Since we're talking about industry challenges, though, another demanding aspect of facility management is obviously seasonal planning. We get questions about scheduling and seasonal planning all the time. Chris, what strategies have you used to stay organized and prepared for leagues before a season starts?
Well, depending on the program for us, we do map out utilization in advance consistently. Not all plans go exactly as you want, but we do think they can follow trends of registration that makes sense for people, like the difference between possibly signing up 2 weeks before Labor Day versus signing up after Labor Day, as an example, and then build your calendar accordingly. It doesn't apply to everything that we do, but it does apply. It does apply to some areas. So I think we tend to use the spring, the April-May timeframe to map out some of our utilization planning, knowing there's going to be adjustments, but we want to at least get our calendar set so we can work backwards in most of our plans, not be caught off guard or be reactive. Is generally our strategy from that standpoint.
Yeah, we talk about working backwards. I'd like to get even more specific with that, though. How far in advance does your facility start registrations for upcoming leagues? So, for example, if we know the soccer season is starting in the fall, let's say September, October time, how far in advance, or what's the rule, at least for you, in terms of like when to start preparing for that season?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to change from program to program, but I'll speak specifically to, from an adult league standpoint, we tend to be more in an 8 to 10 week type of rotation from the start of a new league, that we want to start the marketing process for that league, even if it's a recurring league. For some of our youth programming, we're probably, because of the session length, we're probably more in a 10 to 12 week pattern in terms of session length when you start priority events, or you're doing re-sign up events, as well as when you're just marketing to the general public. As a rule of thumb, I don't like to start stuff and think that we're going to try to have marketing traction less than 8 weeks minimum. There's not a whole lot that we do that can turn around that quickly and get marketing traction, even if you do ongoing registration. And then the outliers to those answers would be summer camps and like winter youth leagues. For summer camps, we start that planning process in December, when the very last thing most of our folks want to be thinking about is summer camp, because they've just recovered from the previous summer camp. But we start that process in December, and we want to be online by mid-January, February 1 for the early planners. And that marketing cycle really starts February 1 and it lasts through July for the most part. So that's probably about a 16 to 20 week window. And then youth winter leagues kind of correspond with the outdoor fall soccer season, where we want to make sure we're prevalent in front of those potential customers. That's only a small segment of our market, but we want to make sure we're in front of the outdoor soccer customer, rec and competitive, by the month of August. And that registration process, is ready to go then and lasts up until our first season starts in November. So I think that, tell me if that covers what you were looking for from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, definitely. And guys, if you're not taking notes, I highly suggest you do. I'm sure that you guys are probably close to preparing for winter leagues if we're talking that far in advance. Gary, I know that you had experience with Little Kickers, but you're also a consultant for other facilities. Do you kind of have a rule of thumb when it comes to preparing for seasons in advance?
The first rule is never stop, right? So Chris kind of outlined the number of weeks you plan in advance, right? And I think with each program it's a little bit different. So with Little Kickers, we never stop marketing, so we're constantly advertising. We just change our advertising mix, right, and change our advertising message based on where we are in relation to the session start date. But at the end of the day, right, marketing never stops. And one thing to always remember, and especially for you guys that are managers, to sometimes remind your owners that marketing is an investment, not an expense, right? So it's the motor that keeps the business running. So you have to always remember that piece, right? It's an investment, not an expense. And then the next big key thing that Chris pointed on it is, first and foremost, you have to have a plan and a budget, right? So if you don't have a marketing plan and you don't have a marketing budget, you really have nowhere to start. So that's kind of really the key there.
Yeah, Gary, I know you've used DaySmart Recreation for many years. What DaySmart Recreation features have helped you plan out leagues before the season starts in the past?
As far as like using DaySmart, it's really a key thing that we use is on the email receipts, right? And on different automated emails that come from DaySmart, a lot of people don't realize that there is a marketing piece in there, that you can put in marketing ads in there. So for example, if it's in the summer or in the fall and you're getting ready for winter leagues, you can put in there an ad that, hey, registration for winter league starts on X day, and have a QR code that links them back to your league registration page. And then if you're using, depending on how your website's developed, you can also create a landing page that's connected to that QR code, and you can actually get a direct correlation as to how many people actually saw your QR code and then went back to your page and then actually registered. You can track it all the way back to generate an ROI on that, which is basically nothing to building that. So I think those are things that people don't use. Building it for birthday parties, summer camps, certain programs that are coming up, is using that as your own in-house marketing tool to your existing customers.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's an excellent transition to a conversation we're having a lot right now, which is camps. It seems to be a very hot topic for a lot of facility managers right now, because we're approaching that season. When it comes to camps, planning looks different at every facility, but facility managers tend to have a similar strategy regarding timeline, like Chris mentioned, planning and marketing. So let's start from the beginning, since I know marketing is a very interesting point, at least for people who are listening in based on the poll that we launched. One of DaySmart Recreation's features includes our marketing tool, which facility managers use a lot during camp season. Chris, I know Veta Sports has a whole lot going on during camp season, lots of different age groups and sports, including hockey and soccer, etc. Can you walk us through how you market your camps to your target audience?
I can. One thing I'll piggyback on what Gary said about the DaySmart tools. You know, not every email you send to your customer base has to be something fancy that requires a designer and an agency to create. Sometimes a direct communication about a very specific opportunity from a manager to their audience that they have a relationship with, utilizing just regular straight old email DataSmart tool is very useful. So don't forget about the small stuff sometimes, which kind of leads me into the answer about, you know, registration tips, and I saw it come through in some of the questions that you had asked in front. We believe in a really good mix of grassroots email and digital marketing, supported by a solid storefront. So that'd be like your website. And then you got to have obviously ease of online registration, because that's the lay of the land, and it has been for quite some time. So from a grassroots standpoint, a good mix of phone calls and local school contacts. Email marketing, we use third-party service through DaySmart. You can use Constant Contact. We happen to use a system called Emma, and an interface as well with DaySmart. And then obviously the digital marketing is ubiquitous with, you know, Meta products and a variety of different digital marketing strategies that you can look at. And we do look at all. We don't use all, but we feel like phone calls work in our market. People are busy. They serve as a reminder to register for an opportunity to sell someone about the benefits of our program. And sometimes we get a lot of traction out of phone calls if we catch people at the right time and the right day, and we do beta testing on when that might be. Targeted program emails are more effective for us. We don't like to send stuff out that says, hey, sign up for one of these 5 things. We kind of like to send stuff out that says, sign up for this thing, and keep it focused in that regard. And then, as Gary mentioned earlier, we do utilize game reminders via DaySmart and promotional ads within our leagues. And we also do a lot of internal signage, because we have a lot of people in our building, and we want to make sure that they know what programs we have going on. And our team has been outstanding about utilizing QR codes. I mean, we've been using them for quite some time, and they are on everything we do from an internal marketing standpoint, because it's just so easy in the building to say, oh, I see that program, that's great. I'll click the QR code, it takes me right to the info, and it's super simple and fast. So we do utilize that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's great to have a mix when it comes to marketing of emails, QR codes, text, SMS, because the reality is we all know how busy facility managers are, parents, etc. They're not always going to have time to read through an entire email when it comes to your camp marketing. So other forms of marketing are great too, like Chris, you mentioned phone calls. Gary, a question we often get from facility managers, including our own customers, is the other half of marketing, which is, where do I even start when it comes to marketing summer camp programs or programs in general? When you're consulting with your facility management clients, what strategies do you typically advise them to follow when marketing their programs for the first time?
So the first thing I do, particularly with summer camps and birthdays, is I create a competitor worksheet. So in the worksheet, you include everything about other summer camps in the market. Camp types, do they offer full day, half day, just weekly, specialty sports camp, all sports, activity fun camps? What is their camp program? And then what camp amenities do they have? Early, late drop off, lunch, t-shirt, field trips, swimming pool, things that you may or may not have. And then, staffing. Do they list qualifications of their staff? Do they list their staff to customer ratio, staff to camper ratio on their website? What is their pricing? What are their camp dates? Do they do discounting, early bird, multiple sibling discount, police and military discount, right? And then you use this worksheet to create what's called your unique selling proposition, or USP for short. And once you create your unique selling proposition, then your staff learns what that unique selling proposition is and has to be able to communicate that to the customer. So we start from there first, right? We have to identify basically a community needs assessment and then where we are in the marketplace, and then how we're going to differentiate our camp and how we're going to be better than the other camps in the market. So you use that summer camp, and then you use that to start your unique selling proposition. And then if you're currently in the summer camp business, you have to use surveys to get feedback from your customers. And then if you use that feedback to make improvements to your camp programs, and then use these to put into your USP and highlight those in your USP, you may have missed something, right? Again, Chris said, when you start, I say you got to be ready to go by January 1st or the latest February 1st, right? Have a plan, right? Using the tools Chris talked about earlier, as far as like going, are there school calendars? Are there backpacks? Are there community newspapers? Do you go to the pediatric dentist office? Do you go to the pediatric doctor's office and leave flyers in those types of places, right? And then you have to have a timeline and a plan and make sure that all those market initiatives overlap, right? So they work together to build a cohesive approach. So I start with building a competitor worksheet, and I revisit that on a yearly basis for summer camp and for birthday parties.
Wow, that's really extensive. And thanks for sharing all of that. I know we talked about challenges in the industry, and we touched on tips and tricks for planning, leagues and marketing. And now I want to shift this conversation over to customer experience, because that's arguably one of the most important parts of facility management. Gary, I know you mentioned feedback. I know that's something that you're a big proponent of. How do you effectively collect feedback at the end of a season or event?
Well, collecting feedback is continual, and Chris and at Beta, they do a good job of this. They do use a lot of surveys. He can kind of give you a little bit of detail about their survey, but also your management team, right? So I often see the league manager, right, working the front desk, right? And outside of sitting at the front desk, answering the phone call, doing emails, he's not out actually watching his program perform and talking to people, parents in the crowd, or watching the referees and seeing what their actual product is on the delivery. So I think it's a continual process from there. So you never stop learning. But the surveys are a key thing. And I think Chris is kind of pretty good. Veta does a good job of that. So I'll let Chris jump on how they do the surveys, because they're a little bit detailed.
Thanks, Gary. I think too, Keisha, I'm gonna, I kind of had the question for me sounded like, how do you create a positive customer experience? So before we can do a survey, we have to work hard to kind of create that positive customer service experience. And for us, it starts with a clean and an organized environment. We work hard to keep our facilities clean. We spend a lot of money keeping them updated. From there, it's core values and culture. We have excellent leadership at our facilities, our league, and our program management levels of our business, who demonstrate our core values really well, which in turn sets a tone for the importance of core values and culture in every part-time person we hire. So as much as we're in the business of providing fun and a safe and organized environment to our customers, we're also in the business of developing young people who work with us. And I feel like that symbiotic relationship kind of creates the environment for a positive customer service experience. So then when we go execute programs, we have been committed to, for the last couple of years, we survey quite a bit. We survey by program, and we work off of NPS scores. And if you haven't heard of an NPS scores before, you can Google it to learn more about it, but the definition is a Net Promoter Score. That's the acronym. NPS is a customer experience metric that measures loyalty and is predictive of business growth. And I would say we can identify with that statement. Within those surveys that we do by program, which we always review, there's always nuggets. There's information you learn from people. If you incentivize, we get more feedback. The feedback tends to be more positive and rosy, because I think people think that when they're getting an incentive, they should be nicer. When we don't incentivize, we sometimes get direct feedback that we have to learn from and bristle about a little bit. But either way, we do a healthy balance of both, so we can get that feedback from people. And lastly, which I think Gary touched on, aside from what we do with the surveys and the fact that we do them consistently, is our management team spends a healthy balance of their time on site when the people are there. And it's not behind the desk. It's actually, talking to their customers. Our adult league customers in particular are excellent at that, getting to know the people in their leagues and building credibility and rapport with them, as well as all of our program team, because they really get to know their customers well, and the kids and the parents. And It's a big component of the business, the people-centric business that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Chris, you brought up a very great point, and I think a common misconception about building a successful facility is investing all this money in fancy marketing when really it's about going backwards and assessing your core values. How are you training your staff? As you mentioned, Chris and Gary, is your facility clean, right? Like all of these little things that are 100% in your control should also be prioritized before we start looking at external factors that we can spend all our money in, and the rest of it can speak for itself. So those are all really great points. Before we get to questions, because I know we're running on time, one thing I always like to ask our guests is the biggest lessons you learned in your years of experience in the facility management industry. So Gary, I'll hand this one off to you. What is one tip you wish you learned earlier in your career?
Boy, I tell you what, marketing, right? I mean, marketing's changed, right? When I first started, there was no social media marketing, right? And it was all direct mail. I think the more you learn about marketing, and the more you have a plan about marketing, and the more you understand how social media marketing works and what type of social media marketing you should use and when it's effective, right? I think that there's a lot of customers to be found if you work at it and use it as a primary key to driving business along with doing what you're supposed to be doing. I think one of the key, Chris talked on, and one of the questions, Keisha, that you asked us earlier was like, how do you keep customers coming back for more leagues and camps, right? So retention. I think this sounds simple, but the easiest thing to do is to do what you say you're going to do, right? So go above and beyond delivering your unique selling proposition, right? Never stop listening and learning from your customers, and don't shy away from mistakes. Accept them, learn from them, correct them, and get better, and never stop learning. So I think, none of us know everything. So I think between the marketing aspect and being able to take constructive criticism and, making sure that your employees understand your unique selling proposition and can deliver it is key components.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, similar to Gary's question, what is one facility management tip you swear by?
It was funny when I read that question the first time. It was kind of like, there's never one anything. I'm gonna give you 4 answers and I'll make them succinct. Number one, there's never been a job that's beneath me, and I think our team represents the same thing. Culture is a precious commodity. You got to protect it. Build a team that is really good at the list of things that require 0 talent. And if you don't know what's on that list, just Google it. It'll be an eye-opening list. And then the last thing is just have fun, smile, and stay positive. I think that's gotten us through, quite a few challenges.
I love it. All right. Well, we've reached our rapid fire question round. This is my favorite part of every webinar, where I basically collect a bunch of questions that our listeners here submitted before the webinar, and you guys have to answer them in 30 seconds. So if you're ready, I'll start with Gary, coming in hot with question number 1. Gary, what are your thoughts on social media advertising versus parent magazines and other offline options? What works and what doesn't?
They all work, right? Social media is easier to measure your direct ROI when you put in an ad. Marketing within moms groups and parents groups, it's a little bit harder to track the ROI a little bit, but they do work. I don't know how many people use influencers, but if we use influencer marketing a lot, so somebody might get a free little kicker class or a free summer camp, but they have requirements on what they post on their social media. So those are things that some people don't use but are highly effective.
Okay. Coming in with question 2, Chris, I'll bring this one over to you. We didn't hit our target and registration numbers during last year's camp season. What are some ways we can increase registrations before the season starts?
Yeah, what's your, questions I started asking immediately about the problem. What's your registration trend from last year to this year? Have you called people who have not enrolled? Have you emailed and or called every kid who fits your target audience that did something at your facility in the past 6 months? Have you reached out to the schools in a 3 to 5 mile radius of your facility to see if They allow you to promote your camp information at their school, or if they have electronic flyer distribution system that you can send info through. You know, contact your existing summer camp or your camp registrants. Offer buy one, get ones if they sign up for more weeks at camp. You know, with the same customer, instead of BOGOs, ask them to refer a friend they'd love to attend camp with and give the referral a discount and the furring child a discount. Be creative with your discounts where possible. You know, credit towards future participation if you can. And when you do offer credits and discounts, offer them something that doesn't cost you as much as the dollar value. Like give them free lunch. You know, a $5 lunch to the retail customer might cost you $1.50, but it looks like a $5 incentive to the customer. So it's a nice way to save a little money and still give a little more bang for your buck.
Love it.
Is that under 30 seconds?
A little over, but that's okay, Chris. That's okay. Moving along.
I'm trying. It's really hard. It's hard.
Gary, separate from leagues and camps, what are some tips for organizing drop-in events and parties?
So I tell you what, using DaySmart, we started using the birthday party reservation system using the online rental module for DaySmart, and it increased our birthday party closing rate dramatically, instantaneously when we did that. It used to be on our website, you know, call for more information or reserve a spot, and now a customer can actually go in, book a party, pay for a party, fill out the birthday party form, and get all of our information and paid right instantaneously without, and takes away a couple of steps from our birthday party coordinator. So I think that would be a key one that we're using right now.
Question 4, Chris, I know we talked about feedback. This one is separate. What's the best way to gather customer testimonials?
Yeah, I mean, surveys, obviously you'll get some great testimonials from customers during surveys, especially those that are incentivized. Like I said, people tend to be more friendly when they can win something. Outside of that, you know, Gary mentioned earlier about influencers. You have customers that you know are big fans of what you do. Ask them to do it. Ask them to give you something for doing so. And where possible, have them do it within the various social apps of personal distraction. You don't know what people's, you know, flavor is, but they're gonna influence their customer base and their audience. So you're asking your best customers to talk about why you're good and ask them to do it for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last
then
question.
Utilize it on your website, you know, and on some of your marketing materials.
Yeah. Last question, question 5. I'll hand this one over to Gary first, but Chris, this also applies to you if you'd like to answer it. Gary, as a consultant, what are some common mistakes facilities make when you're performing operational audits? And then Chris, I guess I would rephrase that to what are some common mistakes that facilities make at the beginning stages of their opening?
The easiest one to say is that facilities are reactive and not proactive. And I can take that in 100 different directions, but you know, are you good at proactive customer service or are you good at reactive customer service? What is your policy, right? How is your website built and designed? How easy is it to flow? How easy is it to register, right? What is your social media posting look like? What's your frequency schedule? How do you do that? So I think from an operational audit, I go and look and see how the facility is from a proactive standpoint. And based on those simple things, I can pretty easily figure out what I'm going to find when I show up.
Yeah. And Chris, handing that one over to you. What are some common mistakes that facilities make in the early stages?
I can answer from I would say a multi-location standpoint if I can. And maybe it applies to an individual location when it comes to your management team. You know, best practice sharing and communication horizontally amongst locations and or programs is really important. Lots of times each person's problem is being experienced and or was solved by someone else within your own organization. So share and talk about those things. It gives you consistency and I think scalability as well. You know, and then, you know, from a multi-location standpoint, you know, sometimes we forget that we're still one facility, even though we're 10. So we encourage our folks to think about, if you were only managing this place and this is all you had to do today, what would you be doing? What would you be doing differently? It doesn't matter if you're part of 10, you're still just one place, and this one place has to be successful. So I think sometimes we get a little bit too over our heads about the number of things we have to do, and we forget about each thing we have to do really well that make for the revenue streams that make our facility successful.
Excellent. Well, I hope you guys are taking notes because this was all extremely valuable information. I'm going to go ahead and close this here. And thank you, Gary and Chris, so much for just coming on to our webinar today. We'd love to have you back at one point, and I'm sure our audience members were super excited to have you on as well. For those of you who are still here, we will be sending you guys an email at the end of this webinar a few days later with the recording of this full webinar. If you'd like to share it with friends, we absolutely encourage you to do so. I didn't see any questions in the question box today, but if you guys did have questions, please feel free to shoot us a question or two, and we'll make sure that Gary and Chris are able to answer those questions for you. So please keep an eye on your inbox for that recording and future webinar events that we'll be hosting in the future. And thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week and happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.